Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of whatever we're calling this here, I guess, top 10 albums by genre. I think, Martin, we're going to have to come up with a new playlist and a new title for these. But anyway, in the co-captain's chair this morning, as on most Friday mornings, Mr. Martin Popoff, good morning. No snow up your way? Did you get any snow or nothing?
Morning. No, still sunny and cold here.
Wow, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I was kind of hoping we'd send some of it up to Canada, but I guess it just kind of went out to sea. So no big deal. So today we're going to talk about a pretty cool slice of Americana, I guess you can call it. Southern rock, right? Southern rock, which means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. There's a lot of different bands around the world who claim to play Southern rock. Usually we consider Southern rock performed and recorded by bands that kind of came from Texas, Louisiana, the Carolinas, Georgia, Florida, down south. So below the midline here in the States. But, you could include other bands. I mean, Martin and I had this whole conversation yesterday about bands in the history of rock who are nowhere near the South in the United States, but yet made music that sound like Southern rock, right? So.
Well, in fact, the very last episode of my History in 5 Songs with Martin Popoff podcast is called Southern Rock by Proxy. And there I included, a band I'm gonna talk about, I'm sure you are too, in this episode, ZZ Top, because that's slightly problematic. But I included BTO, Pat Travers, Little Feat, and Foghat in that, right?
Yeah.
And I've done other Southern Rock episodes. I called one Southern Rot, which is about when Southern rock bands discover the 80s and keyboards and MTV and how bad that goes.
Yeah.
And I think I did one called the 300th Anniversary Tour, which is about bands that could go forever. And in that, I think I talked about Leonard Skinner and some form of the Allman Brothers or whatever. So near and dear to my heart, this genre.
Yeah, exactly. And for those who maybe missed it, and God, how long ago was it? I should have just gone and grabbed it. Martin put out a really cool book on Southern rock bands.
Yeah,
and albums.
It's long out of print. I've got a copy here.
I got one. I can see it on my shelf. Yeah. That's a great one. Yeah. I've used that for reference many times over the years. It's a really, really well done book. And it's funny you mentioned how when the 80s came, the Southern rock bands kind of didn't really know what to do and just did whatever they felt was kind of hip at the time. And the results were often disastrous. I think even worse than like some of the prog bands we talked about on yesterday's show. Yeah. I mean, it's like the prog rockers and the Southern rockers had no clue what to do when the 80s came around. And some of the results were not good at all. But anyway, that's a story for another day. We could do a whole show on that. Yeah. 70s rockers who came into the 80s and just completely shit the bed, right? So Exactly. All right, so we've each put together a list of 10, and again, let's reiterate, these are our favorite albums in this genre. These are not necessarily, we're not saying these are the greatest Southern rock records of all time. These are just simply our 10 favorites. And we've both, I got a pretty long list of honorable mentions as well. So I'm going to have Martin kick us off with his number 10.
Okay, so I have to reiterate that I made all sorts of deals with myself and I lied to myself and then I corrected myself and moved things around as I was telling Pete before we went on air. I mean, I basically overhauled my whole list this morning. And it's funny, if this truly was all my favorites, it would probably be 5 ZZ Top albums in the 1 to 5 slot. So I had to temper that back a little bit and be reasonable and responsible. And part of my moving things around was doing that as well. But also with my list, I'm gonna talk about a few things where an album represents something in Southern rock at that time, and it's the album I picked to go in that slot to represent that. So long story. So, anyways, let's start off. I'll go with Leonard Skinner's Second Helping. This is a record that went, there we go. This is a record that went double platinum. Huge album. It's got, probably the most famous Southern rock song of all time in Sweet Home Alabama, arguably Freebird, or, arguably Ramblin' Man or Midnight Rider or something as well. But really, it's probably down to Sweet Home Alabama and Freebird, honestly.
For the masses, I would agree with you.
Yeah. But I love Don't Ask Me No Questions. Ballad of Curtis Lowe is amazing on this as well. Not a very heavy band, and it's a little bit of a protest mark putting a Leonard Skinner album so low. And I didn't go a lot of albums by bands, but I do have one later as well. But But this is not a band I actually listen to a whole heck of a lot anymore, except for Walmart Leonard Skinner. Like I like modern day Leonard Skinner. These albums. Someone came up with that term. You look at these album covers and they look like Walmart albums, and they're the albums that you would get in a Walmart by Leonard Skinner, right? I like modern Leonard Skinner, and maybe it's because
I'm totally with you.
Maybe I'm too tired of the old stuff and I've heard it too many times, but I play the modern Leonard Skinner more in the last 15, 20 years than I play the early Leonard Skinner. So but this is me being a little more responsible. Like I said, I don't play this album all the time anymore. But there we go. Number 10, second album.
Yeah, I mean, not to go off on a tangent, but I absolutely agree with you. And I love the classic Skinner stuff. I do. It's part of my DNA. But I'm one of those guys that, like, when Skinner came back with the retooled lineup, after all the tragedy and all that stuff, they still made a lot of really good music. And I bought all those albums. And quite frankly, my wife also digs those albums too. So, hey, we can listen to like modern Skinner together, right? That doesn't happen that often. So I think all those albums that they released, post 1990 or so, they're all really enjoyable. But yeah, Walmart Skinner, I totally get that. I totally get it. All right, cool. So like Martin said, I struggled with not having the majority of my list littered with Skinner, Almonds, ZZ Top, Blackfoot, Molly Hatchet albums. I mean, it could have easily done that. So kind of like I did in yesterday's episode, the Prague episode, I went with just one band, one album of theirs, just because I felt there are other bands I wanted to represent in this list as I dig some of these albums quite a bit. So my number 10, right? Yeah, okay. 1976. And this band, for some people, kind of straddle the line. They're from the South. A good chunk of their music really kind of fits and sounds like a lot of these other bands we're going to talk about, but these guys also were really good at writing just very accessible pop songs. I'm talking about Atlanta Rhythm Section, a rock and roll alternative right there.
Oh, yeah.
Dynamite album. And again, it's got some good hits here. I think their biggest selling single, highest charting single of all time, So Into You, really good pop song. But you got songs like Sky High, which are really good, Georgia Rhythm, Outside Woman Blues, Neon Nights, and No, Not the Black Sabbath song, Hitchhiker's Hero, just a real good kind of feel good album with some excellent instrumentation. I mean, these guys could seriously play. In fact, if I remember correctly, the bass player was a huge Prague fan. And I think I read an interview with him once that he said like his favorite bands of all time were Gentle Giant and Genesis or something like that. So, pretty neat. But yeah, really good band. Still around in some form today, right? If I'm not mistaken, or were up until recently. I don't know. They have a lot of albums, a lot of really good ones, but I think rock and roll alternative, probably my favorite for them. So that's my number 10.
Cool. All right. So now I'm going to be quite contrarian and, a little bit of a spoiler alert on this as well. Sticking with the Walmart Southern Rock theme, I'm going to go with Molly Hatchet Justice from 2010. This is a band, even more pronounced than pronounced Leonard Skinner. I actually prefer the later, heavier Molly Hatchet with Phil McCormick. There's no point putting down Phil over Jimmy or Danny Joe Brown. They're all deceased. They're all passed on. Nobody gets that as the romanticizing, the greatness of the early stuff. Because I actually, I'm not a big fan of the early stuff. I just found it so middle of the road, trying to be heavy but not, and those kind of cardboardy Tom Werman productions. But I love Phil. Phil has so much personality. He's got all the voice of Jimmy or Danny Joe Brown, and this is such a crushing. This is the heaviest Southern rock band in existence right now. That's a legitimate band from the old days. I mean, you listen to Vengeance on this, but Been to Heaven, Been to Hell, Safe in My Skin, I love, American Pride, Gonna Live Till I Die. I mean, it's just so maudlin Southern rock, but yet so heavy at the same time. Bobby Southern Rock Bobby Molly Hatchet is my favorite Molly Hatchet. So I literally, this was my main protest vote. I do not have any more Molly Hatchet on my list, but it's this stuff, Silent Reign of Heroes and all this Devil's Canyon kind of stuff. And, there's an early one that's on most people's list. There's another early one that's on a lot of lists, right? So there you go, Justice. Like I say, more so than Skinner. I actually play for all Southern rock, actually, I play the last bunch of Molly Hatchet albums more than anything. There you go.
So people are typing furiously right now. It's like, that's not really Molly Hatchet. It's not Molly Hatchet. And guys, I don't know how many of you who are going to say that have actually heard those albums that Martin is talking about. They're really, really good, really heavy Southern rock albums. And
10 members of that band have died.
Yes, exactly. Right.
Yeah,
And
I was looking.
And let's be frank, members of all these bands we're going to talk about today, the Southern rock genre has been just decimated by deaths over the last decade or two.
Yeah.
I mean, so many original members, subsequent members of a lot of these bands we're going to talk about are gone, right? Yeah, and Molly Hatchet especially. But, and you know, maybe they should have continued on with a different name, all right? But I think you can't deny that the music they have created post, you know, the Danny Joe Brown years, with Bobby at the helm, with the various members of, I mean, those are really good albums, really good albums. But I know there are a lot of people who can't accept, you know, when all the original members are gone and, you know, they kept the name. And I get all that, right? But I think just to discount the music because of that. Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, again, that's an argument in the story for another day. All right, my number 9. So here, like Martin mentioned earlier, when you think of Southern rock, sometimes Texas is like kind of questionable. I don't think so. This band especially, you know, absolutely belongs in this discussion. Point Blank, second season, their second album from 1977. I mean, this is, you know, they're kind of like ZZ Top Jr., right? Sort of.
Yeah, Baby ZZ Top, Bill Ham, you know, Lone Wolf Productions and all that. So Southern rock sounding, that record, right?
Totally. Yeah, this one. You know, I've always preferred their first two. And then the next couple albums, they started to get kind of commercial. They had a couple minor hits and what have you. I think the sound changed a little bit, but the first two albums are spectacular. But I think this album, the second album, is, if you love all these other bands we're going to be talking about today and you haven't heard this, it just slots right in there. It's from the same time period. You got the slide guitars, the big riffs, the kind of that, you know, whiskey soaked vocal style, the catchy hooks. It's all here. The great rhythms, just a really, really fun album. And I mean, I didn't discover these guys till like way late. I don't think I started listening to Point Blank until the 90s. And I was like, holy crap, where's this band been all my life? Because I mean, I've been listening to most of these bands we're talking about since like the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden,
as a correction, I mean, that one I pulled up at that episode that I just did of my podcast, I actually did Point Blank instead of ZZ Top because I didn't want to talk about ZZ Top all over. But look at that album cover, right? Talk about, you know, that's about as Southern rock as you can get, right?
It totally is. Yeah. It looks like it could be a Pot Liquor album cover, you know, an old Skinner album. I mean, it's just totally sick. It's another band I forgot to even bring up.
That's one of my honorable mentions. I played that stuff again. Those two Pot Liquor albums, they were really good. 70 and 71.
Yeah, they're excellent. Oh, before I forget, Jamie Laszlo, thanks for the shirt. I totally appreciate it. I'd wear it today in honor of you. So anyway, back to Martin for number 8.
My number 8, I went with Government Mule, Life Before Insanity, their third album, right? And here's a couple others of theirs. You know, I saw these guys live at the Opera House in Toronto, one of the loudest shows I've ever seen. You know, I picked this to represent the newer kind of stuff because I don't have a lot of newer stuff in here. There's no Blackberry Smoke or Blackstone Cherry or Alabama Shakes or Drive-By Truckers. Government Mule for me represents that transition point into those kinds of bands and the ethic of those bands, like just the quality. The keyboard textures, all the textures, the jam band quality, the heaviness, they know their heaviness. Warren Haynes knows heaviness, right? But this is an Allman Brothers offshoot band, right? With We Lost Alan Woody. That was the last record that he was on before he died. Heroin overdose, 44 years old. But Alan and Warren are Allman Brothers offshoots, and Warren's voice, his vocals are so bluesy and so Southern, right? So yeah, I like them for their heaviness, their power, but yet, you know, a bluesiness that when you move into the modern era, you have all the history of the blues behind you, so you could even sound bluesier than the old stuff, although no one's ever going to give it the same level of authenticity. as the old stuff. But you listen to that record and it's just a passionate, deep, long songs, diving into the mellowness is so mellow, the psychedelicness is so psychedelic, the bluesiness is so bluesy, the heaviness is pretty ZZ Top. So yeah, great band with lots and lots of records, live records, just like every complicated Southern rock band, live records, covers records, yep. All sorts of stuff. But yeah, a good band, and I'm picking them here to represent, moving into the newer era.
Yeah, and I want to comment on that a little bit because I'm going to talk about them again in a little bit. But Warren Haynes, what a musician, what a songwriter, what a vocalist. I mean, I think one of the most important musicians of the last probably 30 years. Especially, when it comes to this genre, but when it comes to psychedelic music, jam band, all that sort of thing. I mean, he's just done so much. And I think that Government Mule, the band, were a perfect, you mentioned transition, and I think they were right band, right time to kind of keep this thing going into the modern era. They appreciate the bands like Free and Bad Company and Zeppelin and, Floyd and all that kind of stuff. But yet, the lineage, it comes from Skinner and playing with Dickie Betts. And I think they bring a lot of things to the table. And the early albums really heavy. Then they started to get, more, elements of blues and jazz and psych and pop all kind of infiltrated their music, roots rock, right? And now you've got all these, you mentioned Blackberry Smoke and Blackstone Cherry, and there's so many other bands now that kind of fall into this Southern rock category. And quite frankly, how many of these like modern, like crossover country bands technically are like Southern rock bands, right? They claim to be country, but the music's pretty rocking, has a lot of qualities of a lot of these bands that we're going to be talking about today. So it's kind of interesting where Southern rock sits today, because I think there's a ton of younger bands that could qualify. But when most people think Southern rock, they think the old bands like Skinner, the Outlaws, Molly Hatchet, so on and so forth. So,
and that's because of New Country, right? New Country decided they had to be more entertaining. Shania Twain was a little more, raised the volume with the Mutt Lange stuff, Garth Brooks with the big shows and stuff. So when it transitioned into we got to do a little more than old country on stage, and it worked great, right? Yeah. So soon as you bring in the guitars and a little more rock and roll, yeah, you're basically a Southern rock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, number 8 for me from 1981.
Okay.
38 Special, Wild Eyed Southern Boys.
Yeah.
So, and here's a perfect example of a band taking that framework. You've got a Van Zandt here in the band, right? So, taking the framework started by the Almonds and Skinner. If you listen to the first couple of 38 Special albums, they're very much sound like those early Skinner albums. And then all of a sudden, these guys figured out that they can write big arena rock songs with just absolutely killer hooks and harmonies, and still have it sound Southern, but really create songs for the masses and for the mainstream. And these guys, I mean, how many big singles did this band have? They still sounded Southern, right? They still had that kind of twang to it, but big riffs and just amazing vocal harmonies, catchy hooks, fantastic, ultra memorable guitar solos. I mean, this album is just chock full of them. Hold On Loosely is one of the all-time great songs of the 80s. Wild Eyed Southern Boys, Fantasy Girl, Hitting and Running, First Time Around. I mean, so many really great songs on here. I really struggle on which 38 Special album I was going to put on this list. I think this is my favorite technically, but you could have put, Special Forces, or I mean, any number of those ones. They're like 3 or 4 in a row that are just like absolutely amazing. So yeah, that's my my number 8 for today.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. All right. My number 7, I went with this ridiculously named album. Danny Joe Brown and the Danny Joe Brown Band. That's a problem with Southern rock too. They're not so great with the names of their bands sometimes, right? Yeah. Now this I picked as a bit of a protest vote as well, because I consider it as good or better than the first bunch of Molly Hatchet albums. I mean, this is a perfectly good album, and it's also because this is early Bobby Ingram on here as well. John Galvin is in the band as well. So just a good, solid Molly Hatchet-like, fairly rockin' album with the most legendary Molly Hatchet singer. And I also picked it a little bit to represent you know, the side projects, because this is a great album as well.
It is, yeah.
And then, you know, there's an alternate, a funny, a cool promo conversation with Rossington Collins Band, right? But this is a great record. This also could have been picked as one of those. But a lot of people, when they're going off the beaten track, you know, down the country road to the solo band stuff, will pick this album. It's quite well regarded in southern rock circles. So there you go.
Yeah, it's damn good. I'm a big fan of that album. And you know, if you didn't really know any better, and someone, you know, if you'd never heard it before and someone put that on for you, you'd swear it was a early Molly Hatchet album, because it's really not that much different. It's quite good. Really good songs, good playing. I think like that first Artemis Pyle band album too is also really good. A lot of those early solo albums are good. The Collins one is great. The Steve Gaines solo album is really good too. A lot of good stuff. All right, number 7. Got to have the Outlaws in here. It's just a matter of which one do I pick, but I think I kind of lean towards this one. Hurry Sundown from 1977. You know, the 3-guitar army. These guys, I think maybe more so, maybe them and the Marshall Tucker Band, and of course Charlie Daniels Band as well, really embraced their countryside and weren't afraid to throw those country rock elements into all their albums. But I think because they had the 3 kick-ass guitar players, right, and they do a lot of guitar solos, they always came across as a little more rockin' maybe than Marshall Tucker or Charlie Daniels Band. But some great tunes on here. Here in My Heart Talking is a great kind of country pop song, right? What else we got here? Holiday, another amazing song. Hurry Sundown is this great haunting southern rock anthem. Gunsmoke, terrific. Cold and Lonesome, Man of the Hour. Love the vocal harmonies, love the guitar playing. These guys could write hooks. Every album is filled with them, and just a kick-ass band live. I've seen the Outlaws numerous times live, and they're always on point. I mean, even today, without, you know, Huey's gone, again, another band, so many deaths, right? So now you got Henry Paul, basically, it's basically the Henry Paul Band today going on as the Outlaws, but the Henry Paul Band were a great band as well, and I'll talk about them a little later. So back to you.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So another provocative choice, I suppose, a little bit, you know, always up for debate. Black Crowes, you know, Atlanta, you know, in an odd space and time. The first album was always compared to the Faces. So Faces, Humble Pie is almost like all southern rock from an alternative universe. You know, it's coming from that Rolling Stones, Yardbirds, Free, Bad Company oeuvre era, but it's English stuff. So British blues boom is a big influence on southern rock as well, of course, right? With Cream and all those bands, Free and like I say, Humble Pie. And so the first one was compared a lot to the Faces, but they got quite southern on this. I mean, the title should be a clue. It's called the Southern Harmony and Musical Companion, right? Very southern rocky album. You know, rumor has it, apparently, I don't know much about the prehistory of the Black Crowes, but apparently they were more of like a Paisley new wave band when they started out. So there's a lot of this dark history that they bury where they weren't, you know, the Faces. But that paid off famously for them, because in the hair metal world, they were seen as one of these really authentic bluesy hair metal bands, and they hit big immediately, right? And then this was a massive hit. You know, Remedy, you know, all of these songs, you know, Thorn in My Pride, there's so much on here that is so quintessentially southern rock. And then they even went more and more and more southern rock over the years. So it's not like it was an anomaly. So again, it's like, can you include bands like this? Should you include bands like this? You know, one band I think I stuck in that book, I believe, was Jackal. I love Jackal, and I consider them very southern rock. And if we ever do a Jackal thing, I'm not sure if you've done Jackal, but Cut the Crap, for some reason, I just love that record so much. That's the one I played over and over. But, you know, that's a step further than the Black Crowes. Jackal, I mean, that would probably be more contentious, but I don't think this is that contentious at all. I think they're very, very southern rock sounding and looking. I mean, look at them, right?
Yeah.
But it's a different era. You know, there's some jealousy because they were super famous, and there's probably even some hostility because they're kind of like considered jerky guys. You know, the Robinson brothers fought with each other, but they've also are considered kind of cranky dudes just generally, right? So I think there's I think there's a lot of ill will to the Black Crowes, but then also a lot of people love them a lot as well, and they became kind of a jam band as well over time. And yeah, they're all their records, every single one of them is just really good and creative and quite brave in what they do. But I think very southern rock. So there you go.
Yeah, I think they belong, absolutely. And they were really big.
Yeah.
Really big for a number of years. And I think a lot of people still really love them. And yeah, they've become kind of like the modern day Kinks, right? The Davies brothers and the Robinson brothers. I mean, it's like, can't we all just love each other and get along, right?
Oasis, right?
Yeah. Exactly. In other words, don't form a band with your sibling, right? I think it just does. History shows it just does not work.
Yeah.
That's a good choice. Good choice. And I'm gonna go with another modern band here as my number 6. Government Mule, the debut from 1995. I remember going to see them. I believe it was this tour. May have been the next one. I kind of don't remember. It was either 95 or 96. And I saw them in Irving Plaza in New York City. And again, loved the albums, right? But had never seen them live. And at the time, Derek Trucks and his solo band opened up. And he was like, 18, 19 years old at the time, right? He was just starting to come up. Lo and behold, a few years later, he would actually be in the Allman Brothers band, right? Replacing Warren. But I remember they played like 4 hours that night. And it went till like 2 o'clock in the morning. And it was just one long jam after another. And I was exhausted by the end of the evening because you're standing up all night. It's in a club and there's like maybe 2,000 people in there. You're standing up the entire night and you're drinking and hanging out and whatnot, but it's just like, man. And I'm like, these guys are amazing. Warren is such a killer guitar player, but I'm toast. I'm completely toast. But that's kind of what these guys have always brought to the table. It's like they write great songs, they go play it live, and every 5-minute song becomes 12. Right. But this album is a great throwback to not only the Southern rock masters from the 70s, but I think like we talked about before, Warren and Matt and Alan were big fans of the British, heavy blues rock acts like Free and Bad Company and Zeppelin and all the usual suspects and, maybe like Mountain here from the US, but some great songs on here. My favorite Government Mule songs of all time are from this album. Mother Earth is killer, Rockin' Horse, Temporary Saint, Train, Mule, Painted Silverlight. They do a cover of Mr. Big, which is absolutely amazing. World of Difference, just big, meaty riffs, great bluesy solos, and those amazing vocals. Just, the power trio of the mid-90s, in my opinion. So.
Cool. Excellent. Okay. My number 5. I'm going to go with Allman Brothers Band, Brothers and Sisters. There we go. I could have gone with Idle Wild South. I could have gone with the debut, I think, pretty easily. I almost could have gone with Greg Allman Laid Back as well. But this has Wasted Words, one of my favorite songs by them. Ramblin' Man is so huge, right? Of course. Jessica, one of the iconic instrumentals with the twin leads. People always talk about the twin lead pedigree from the Almonds really first, through Wishbone Ash, through Thin Lizzy, through Priest somewhat, but Iron Maiden obviously is the big one, right? But you get a little bit of that there. Come and Go Blues. But I really, the other one I could have put in here was Richard Betts' Highway Call, right? It's called Highway Call, right? It's not a great Southern. That's also a great album. So there's a lot of good offshoot albums as well, and then there's some good stuff later on as well from this band, right? But this is a band that I went through a phase where I played them a lot, and then I haven't really played them very much lately. I don't play this band a lot, so it's a bit of a protest having one in here in the middle, and I don't have any more further on in my list because that's the truth. I mean, and then the truth would probably be, again, if I was really being like, okay, absolutely only the albums I love, I'd have a bunch of ZZ Top on here, but I'm only putting them in here once because of that slight problem with them from being from Texas also, right? Plus I didn't want to load it up, but no, Allman Brothers, obviously they absolutely have to be in here, but I don't think they are the quintessential Southern rock band. I think Leonard Skinner is. There you go.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue that. Yeah, I mean, I'll talk a little bit about that in a bit, but yeah, because I think the Almonds, they were a little more well-rounded than some of these other bands we're talking about. They dipped their feet in lots of different places. So yeah, they may have been the first, but they are not the quintessential. I absolutely agree with you. All right, my number 5. Let's have a little Molly Hatchet action. I had a hard time. Which one do I throw in? Like Martin, I love the later stuff, but I wanted to go with one of the first 3 albums, which in my mind are still their classic albums. And, it may be a little typical, but I'm going to go with Flirting with Disaster. Although I probably these days listen to Beating the Odds a little bit more. But, this is the album that really turned me on to Molly Hatchet. And, when you're what year was this? This was 1979, right? So when you're a 13-year-old kid and you walk into your local record shop and you're into like, fantasy and horror and monsters and superhero stuff and all that, and you see this album cover by Frank Frazetta staring you in the face, what are you going to do? You're going to buy it, right?
Yeah.
You're just going to buy it. But at the time, I think, Flirting with Disaster was all over FM rock radio, but, Whiskey Man, it's all over now. Jukin' City, Boogie No More, Gunsmoke, all sorts of good stuff on here. But again, and Martin has brought this up many times. It's funny how, 3 guitar players, they're just big, menacing looking guys. And you got these great album covers. This band was never really that heavy early on.
Yeah.
Right. And was that down to the production? Maybe, I don't know. Cause I saw them live. They were cranking live, but for whatever reason, I don't think those first couple of albums really captured their kind of furious live sound. Like, it's like they were a different band live than they were.
Beating the Odds, the song Beating the Odds is one of their heaviest, right?
Yes. Yeah. From those first couple albums. Yeah, absolutely. And, unfortunately, Molly Hatchet is one of those bands that dipped into that 80s stereotypical sound, like a couple hours albums after this, that was pretty disastrous, really disastrous, I'd say. But yeah, this for me is a Southern rock classic and got to be on this list somewhere. So that's my number 5.
Okay. All right. All right. For my next choice, which is number 4, I went with Blackfoot Marauder. And it's funny, I was going to pick Siogo because I play Siogo more. I do love this album, but I had to kick Siogo out of here because in honor of us doing an episode on Southern rock, this is more Southern rock by far than Siogo. Siogo is, I almost wanted to put Siogo in as an example, one of the rare examples of bringing in that poppy keyboard sound with the covers, Hearts Grown Cold and all that, Ken Hensley coming on. I love that record, and I think they did it right, and it's very rare that the bands did do that right. I've always said it's a little bit like Uriah Heep with Abominog and Head First. I do love both of those records, and it's so Blackfoot is one of the bands that did it right, but then did it really bad right after that with Vertical Smiles.
It's like what happened? We embraced it so well on Siogo, and then boom, it just all went to
But I moved this up a notch because it is very, very Southern rock, and I'm a metalhead. I want my metal in my Southern rock. This is obviously the heaviest band with Good Morning, right? Kicking off with almost like a Southern thrash tune, right? Too Hard to Handle is just big and menacing, really cool. Diary of a Working Man is their, one of their big epic. Freebird, it's like Highway Song or whatever, a Simple Man kind of thing. So yeah, this is the Southern rock band that's actually from the South that is probably my favorite, really, that I play more. So I like these guys more than Skinner and the Almonds. And that's probably sacrilege as well, but I'm a metalhead, so I want the heaviest Southern rock band. I mean, I thought of sticking an Axe album in here. I love Axe, although I'm not really quite sure exactly where all of Axe is from, but I love Axe. So that's your Step Too Far. That's your Jackal to your Black Crows. Axe is your to your Blackfoot kind of thing. So there you go, my number 4.
Well, we're on the same page because Marauder is my number 4 as well. Right. There you go. I agree with everything you said. This is the heaviest Southern rock band. And as a metalhead, I think the reason why I always gravitated so hard towards Blackfoot is because they were so heavy. And this is a pretty face melting album from start to finish. There's no let up on this album. There's no little, little poppy song in the middle here, or anything like that. This is just one kick-ass track after another. And I remember the first time I heard this album and Good Morning came on, I was like, holy crap. It's like, that's Blackfoot? It's like, yes, indeed it is. And yeah, just so many great songs. Fire of the Dragon. That's, for crying out loud, that's like a new wave of British heavy metal song, right? So many great songs on here. Ricky Medlock, what a singer, what a songwriter, what a guitar player. And yeah, I mean, I think we both praised this quite a bit, and it deserves all of it. So could have been even higher. I was like, my top 4, I just absolutely love it. I was like, oh man, that's like, I probably played this more than my top, maybe not, but just as much as my top 3 over the course of.
All right. Well, my number 3 is my favorite Blackfoot album. So I've always loved Tomcat, and it just felt like the one that was right in the perfect spot. I'm not a big Strikes fan. I never was a big Strikes fan, but I love everything on this, especially Fox Chase. Unbelievable, with that Shorty Medlock intro and stuff on it. And Warped is really cool. Just very, again, it's like Marauder. It's like a Ted Nugent crossed with Southern Rock sort of album, and Ted's a good buddy of Ricky's as well. So this is a band I had to put on here twice because they are my favorite Southern rock band. But I think it really came together on this one. This is the sister record, I think, to Marauder. They both sound very similar. Yep. Both good warm puffy production values, like good strong bold 70s production values. And yeah, I find Strikes a little problematic, but this has always been my favorite. So there's my number 3.
You know what I've been listening to a lot lately? The first Blackfoot album. Ever since we did the show a couple months ago, I've been listening to that first one a lot. That's really good. I really dig that one a lot. And you mentioned Ted Nugent. I find a couple of his albums, like later in the 70s, are very Southern rock sounding.
Yeah, for sure. I could have put him in that episode of Southern Rock by Proxy. I almost thought about it, definitely. Because it's and then I've had a few people on Facebook say, okay, so as soon as you start looking at Southern rock not from Southern rock, it becomes more of a urban versus rural argument, right? So bands from rural Ohio or whatever, or Michigan, there's bands from rural areas that sound Southern rock because as you move into any of the rural areas in Canada, it's the same thing too. Suddenly they have country rock or country music stations, right?
Yeah.
So that happens, right? So yeah, Ted makes a lot of sense. And you think of those the last 2 Amboy Dukes albums, right? Call of the Wild and Tooth, Fang and Claw.
Yeah,
totally Southern. Yeah.
It's like, hey, there's a slide guitar lick in that song. It's Southern rock, right? Sure. All right, number 3. We talked about the Almonds before. I'm gonna go with the debut. I think there's probably going to be a lot of people who are watching who are going to be like, how come neither one of you included the Fillmore East album? That's the greatest Southern rock album of all time. And I'm not gonna argue that too much because I absolutely adore the Fillmore album, and that might be the most legendary of all the Allman Brothers albums. But I have a hard time putting live albums. I know Martin and I don't really have the same opinion of live albums, but I personally find that a lot of, especially 70s bands and especially Southern rock bands, they are always going to be more fun, going to go for it more live on stage. And therefore, like almost all these bands we're talking about have great live albums. And I could have easily put every one of my top 10 as a live album, and I didn't want to do that. So that's the reason why the Fillmore is not in this spot right here. I love this first album. I absolutely do. I mean, It's Not My Cross to Bear, Black Hearted Woman is great. Of course, you got Whipping Post on here, The Amazing Dreams, Every Hungry Woman, Trouble No More. It's 32 minutes of absolute perfection, start to finish. But again, not the quintessential Southern rock band like Martin and I talked about before, because I think at their core, the Almonds were basically a blues band. Okay. They also incorporated lots of jazz. You had Dickie Betts, who wrote all these tremendous jazz instrumental tracks and a lot of these early albums. And I think they brought a lot more to the table than, Skinner and Hatchet and a lot of these other groups. So maybe the first. I don't think, I think if you were to ask any of the guys in the Almonds, would they classify themselves as a Southern rock band? They probably say no. But I still think they are absolutely, you know, in this discussion, and they are one of the greats. I agree. And like Martin mentioned before, I love their 90s and early 2000s albums, and I easily could have put any of those on here too if you watched the Allman Brothers show that we did a couple days ago. But yeah, this is I love this record. It shows a really good, young, hungry band, just absolutely going for it. And you know, for 1969, pretty ahead of its time. And you got, you know, Dwayne and Dickie, arguably the first twin guitar team that was doing that sort of thing, and then they predated Wishbone Ash by a little bit, so I'd put them right up the top there. So yeah, that's my number 3.
Cool. All right, so my number 2, I went with Pronounced Leonard Skinner. You know, the first album has Freebird on it, which is an amazing song. It has Simple Man, which I love almost as much as Freebird. Tuesday's Gone is great. I love, for a little more rockier one, Give Me 3 Steps. You have to put this on here, I think, because it's just so, it's just such an iconic Southern rock album. And it's fairly heavy, right? I Ain't the One, kicking off with a song that is just does all the things Southern rock is kind of supposed to do.
Yeah.
You know, pretty rock and rollsy. So I just think it's something that is just so iconically Southern rock and entertaining start to finish, and good enough to be critically acclaimed and not derided. Like, you know, essentially the Almonds and Skinner are the only bands that really, you know, the critics regarded all that well. I mean, Molly Hatchet was kind of ridiculed, Blackfoot was kind of ridiculed. So these are the ones they're semi-critically acclaimed. And I think you can feel comfortable as a Southern rock fan, you know, loving Skinner. And so there you go. I mean, I had to put it there as number 2. This is the only band, along with Blackfoot, who is my favorite Southern rock band, that I thought I had to put in here twice.
Yeah, pretty timeless songs on that first album, right? All right, so my top 2, I had a hard time. I have this feeling that Martin and I picked the same top 2. I have a feeling, but we'll see in a minute.
I don't know. Probably not.
Well, maybe not, but my number 2 could easily be my number 1. But then I thought, well, because their inclusion here is somewhat contentious anyway, I was like, all right, I'm going to put them at number 2, and I'll leave my number 1 as my number 1. So my number 2 is going to be from 1973. Tres Hombres.
You'd go with that, yeah.
From ZZ. I mean, I absolutely love this album. This is such a great album. It's my favorite ZZ Top album. And to me, it's still, you know, if we're going to talk about Government Mule and even some of the Blackfoot stuff, you gotta have ZZ Top in this conversation. Yeah, they're just a good raunchy Texas blues rock band, but then again, so are a lot of these other bands. You know, they had slide guitar. They've got all the sort of things that we love about all these bands. ZZ Top's got as well. I mean, you know, Waiting for the Bus, Jesus Just Left Chicago, Beer Drinkers and Hellraisers, Master of Sparks, for crying out loud. I mean, so many, you know, LaGrange, Precious and Grace. I mean, this is just it's one of my favorite albums of the 70s. I think when I did my favorite album of the year countdown from 65 to 2019, if I remember correctly, I think this was my favorite album of 1973, beating out albums by bands that I, you know, like Purple and Sabbath and Zeppelin and so on and so forth. So that says a lot right there. But I think this is just a kick-ass album, and it's just raunchy, it's gritty, it's bluesy, and that's my number 2.
Okay. Well, we did go with the same band, and I think I telegraphed that early as well. And again, I could have included lots of ZZ Top, but because they are somewhat contentious, I went with the only put them in once. But then I said, damn it, I'm going to put them in the number 1 slot, because absolutely my top 2 or 3 would have been ZZ Top. I have been known to actually call ZZ Top my favorite band of all time. I've you know, when push comes to shove and you try to get that list down really small, that name always comes up, as does AC/DC. Those are the 2 that seem to come up all the time, because I just look at the length of the catalog and how much I love so much stuff. When I totally overhauled my list earlier on as a protest thing, because I always proselytize about how awesome Rhythmine is from 1997. It's so heavy and so good.
It is.
This is why they're one of my favorite bands, because I love to death Mescalero. I love Rhythmine. Antenna, you know, I didn't like so much when it first came out, but I liked it a lot more later on. So the later stuff I love, the 80s stuff I can kind of tolerate, and it's pretty cool. So here you go. Number one for me, this is my favorite ZZ Top album by my favorite band of all time, Tejas. I love Tres Hombres as well. And, you know, unfortunately, my favorite ZZ Top album, had it been a full studio album, would have been Fandango, because the studio side of Fandango is better than any studio side of this. That is my favorite there. But this, I just love how they kind of mellowed back a little bit, and the drums became kind of feathery, and Frank's doing all this kind of intricate, you know, point counterpoint kind of stuff. And then even when they're kind of rocking out, like a song like Arrested for Driving While Blind, they pull back on the arrangement, and it's just got this delicacy to it, right? El Diablo, Snappy Khaki, I love. Enjoying Getting It On. She's a Heartbreaker is like a country tune. It's got the great instrumental Asleep in the Desert. When I was fooling around with you know, guitar, I remember in the 90s, I learned to play that whole thing. I just loved it so much. It's Only Love is also kind of country. So this is a step back in terms of the riff rock for them, and I just loved it when they did that. And I love DeGueo as well a lot. And as a kid, I was kind of like, this is all like, you know, cheap baubles, right? Cheap sunglasses and sound effects. And it was such a huge album that I felt, you know, it was a little too mainstreamy or something. I felt like you know, I liked my cult ZZ Top a little, because this was less of a success than when DeGueo happened, and obviously than Tres Hombres. But yeah, very southern rock sounding. And look at that album cover, like that's a pretty southern, except for the screaming Tejas, you know, with saying we're a little from a little ways. Yeah, I even painted that album cover. I got a painting of that somewhere. But yeah, just love this period of the band, you know, before they went and had their big you know, break, where Dusty even worked at the airport, believe it or not, for a while, slinging bags around. Is pretty incredible story. And that's when you know, Billy went to Paris and got into the new wave and learned all those new tricks and all that stuff. But there you go, number one. You know, one of, you know, possibly my favorite band of all time, and I could have put 3 or 4 albums on this list.
Yeah, there's a couple that I, you know, was looking at. I mean, I love the first album a lot. Right. I mean, that's just a really good one, and that's a good one. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, one of my colleagues on the Hudson Valley Squares show, Ryan Scow, I think Tejas is also his favorite ZZ Top album as well. It's good. Yeah, it's different. It's got a different vibe, and it's almost like it was a welcome vibe after all those albums that came before it. Yeah, good choice. Good choice. All right, my number one, probably not a big surprise here, is the first Leonard Skinner album. So this is one of those situations where, and I love Leonard Skinner. I do. I like all the eras. I like all the albums. But this is one of those situations where it's like, all right, we already know this is one of the greatest albums, the debuts of all time, right? And they have a lot of really strong albums. So when you're looking at their 70s albums, there's a lot to love on all of them, and I dig all of them. But I almost wanted to say, all right, well, the easy pick here is to take this one. So I went and I re-listened again to all of the albums that came after from the 70s, because I kind of wanted to pick one of the other ones. Yeah. But when it comes down to it, I think top to bottom, start to finish, this is the strongest and most represented. And I mentioned before, timeless. There are timeless songs on this. And not that there aren't on all the other ones, but I think there's more of them on here. And this is like, you know, again, if you walk up to someone in the street and you get into a conversation about Southern rock, and they're like, I have no idea what Southern rock is. Where's my best place to start? I'd probably throw in here as a starting point. You know, you mentioned I Ain't the One, killer song. What a great way to start off the album. Tuesday's Gone, again, that's a little more of a kind of lush piece, but, you know, really good for the masses. Give Me 3 Steps is so much fun, shows everything they bring to the table. Simple Man is a great Southern rock anthem, love that. You know, Things Going On, Poison Whiskey, of course you got Free Bird, one of the most overplayed songs of all time, but there's a reason why it's overplayed, right? With that classic guitar solo. So yeah, it's I wanted to pick another one, But in the end, it just came down to this. I knew Skinner had to be at number one, Martin. And I was like, but which one's going to be it? And I'm looking at some of the other ones and I'm like, oh, Give Me Back My Bullets is really good. The second album, it's like, but it always came back to this one. So there you have it.
Yeah, I had nothing fancy on my list at one point too, but
they're all great.
You mentioned slide guitar earlier, and I know we talked about this before. It's how like every city thinks they're the city of parks. Every city thinks they're a foodie city. Every city thinks they're a craft brewery city, right? The top craft brewery city in the world. It's like slide guitar is one of those funny things where, have you ever heard anybody say anything other than, oh, absolutely, he's a god on slide guitar. It's the greatest slide guitar you ever heard. Have you ever heard anybody call any slide guitar part average, or he's not a great slide guitarist, right? It's a funny thing, right? And it's simple to do, but it's like every time someone does it, the critics or whatever, anytime you talk about it, it's like, oh my God, the slide guitar is so amazing, right? So that's a funny one like that.
I will say though, as someone who's been playing guitar for a while, I find it impossible. I have never mastered slide guitar. So I always, when I see someone like, Derek Trucks, who, that guy knows what he's doing. But yeah, it's not everybody does it, but when they do drop in some slide guitar, it's like, listen to that, because it's not the norm, right?
Yeah.
It's not something you hear every day.
But it's a big Southern rock trope, as is from Skinner, the piano, right? The barrel house piano and the big floored, and it sounds kind of out of place. It's an odd thing, but since Skinner did it, everybody kind of had to do it, which is a little bit silly, but it shows up all over the place through Southern rock. It's like that Billy Powell thing now has to be. It's one of the tropes that you have to include in Southern rock somewhere, right?
Yeah, and you got to wonder too, like, did that really start on Jessica?
Yeah,
piano solo in there, and that was the Almonds early on were more doing Greg's Hammond organ work, not really much piano. But after Dwayne died and they were down to just basically the one guitar player and Dickie Betts, it's like they added piano into the band to try to replace that second guitar, and then Skinner made it like a regular part of their repertoire.
Yeah, cool, great.
All right, how about some honorable mentions?
Oh yeah, well, okay, so I in the back of that Southern rock book, and this was so easy to print out, I actually had an appendix where I listed my 10s, 9s, and 8s, and I won't go through all of them, but it was so easy to find these. So I had, like I said, Greg Allman, Laid Back. I had the debut Idle Wild South. I had, okay, so there's live stuff in here as well. I had that Richard Betts album. I had Hydra. I had as a really high choice. Marshall Tucker Band, Where We Belong. The first Rossington Collins Band. Actually, both of them are quite good.
Yeah.
Not so much Rossington later. I had more ZZ Top. I had Atlanta Rhythm Section, Back Up Against the Wall. I had more Black Crowes. I had Black Oak, Arkansas, If an Angel Came to See You, Would You Make Her Feel at Home? I had that Alan Collins. I had Tejon, Grease and Wolfman, Charlie Daniels, also Way Down Yonder, Fire on the Mountain. Great band, and they had some guitar work going on in there, right?
Oh yeah.
This is not a straight country band, right?
No.
I had in here the Levon Helm, American Sun. I had the I think this is the second Hydra album, right? Rock the World.
Yeah.
I had Jackal Cut the Crap. I put that in that book. I just played that out for some reason. That Jackal album is the one I just play all the time. I just love it so much. That's got the Brian Johnson duet on it, right? On one of those songs. It's so cool. I had Marshall Tucker Band, New Life. I had Nitsinger, John Nitsinger from Texas. I had Outlaws, Ghost Riders. I had the First Point Blank, and I had Pot Liquor, First Take. So that was just the 9s, what I thought were 9s and 10s out of 10 in that Southern rock book that I did 15 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, some good stuff there. I think I found out about them from your book, if I'm not mistaken. There's a band called Two Gun, which were, I think, one of the last bands on Capricorn that came really late in the decade. That's a really good one. I scored that on CD not long ago. But some honorable mentions for me. I do want the first Rossington Collins. I have the CD. I just can't find it. But that definitely is on my list. Danny Joe Brown, also on my honorable mentions. Doc Holliday, Rides Again. I'm a big fan of this album and this band. Their first two albums kick ass. Another one of those bands too, Martin, where like the first two albums are great, and then we're into the 80s already, and then it's just like, what the hell happened? Synthesizers all over the place, and like, But this is a really good, if you like the heavier side of the genre, like, you know, Blackfoot and some of the heavier Molly Hatchet stuff, you'll dig these guys. From the Carolinas, Nantucket, the first album. Again, kind of like maybe 38 Special. They mix kind of like that Southern sound with some big poppy vocal harmonies and things. Really, really good album. Gray Ghost by the Henry Paul Band. Love this album. It's just absolutely amazing. It's not that much different than the early Outlaws stuff. You got the multiple guitar players, the big harmonies, the little bit of country going on, the music, fantastic. I want to echo everything you said about the Charlie Daniels Band. So Fire on the Mountain, I could have picked any of those early Charlie Daniels albums. I think most people think Charlie Daniels Band, nothing more than Devil Went Down to Georgia and all the country stuff that he did later on. But man, those like late 60s and all those 70s albums are fantastic. And there are some great, great guitar jams on these albums, because Charlie was a main guitar player. He also had I forget the other guy and his other guitar, his main guitar player was amazing. There's some jazz fusion going on here, lots of boogie. I mean, these are not straight country albums by any means. There's a whole bunch of really good Charlie Daniels Band albums. The first Marshall Tucker Band, really good. And then so Martin and I had this whole conversation about this band the other day. So Little Feat is like one of those bands that kind of so many people lump in with Southern rock, and their music sounds Southerny, right? But they're from California. They never really belongs, but yet their music kind of does. So I wanted to give them a little bit of love today. Time Loves a Hero is the one that I pulled out. But I mean, I went back and in putting my list together, I went back and like, does Little Feat really belong? I know they're not from the South, so I kind of don't want to include them. And I went and listened to like 4 or 5 of their albums. I'm like, yeah, this kind of fits in a weird way. But not, right? So it's very contentious here, but so many people automatically lump them in when they talk about Southern rock bands and albums. But they're definitely great albums. I totally dig them. I'm going to mention them today just because, but I think because they're not from the South, it kind of takes them out of the running.
Yeah. And another great thing about Little Feat is all of their reunion albums after they got back together again are awesome. They're almost better than the early ones.
They're really good. Yeah. You know, again, it's one of those things like, well, Lowell George is not around anymore, so they don't qualify.
No, they took off. They were awesome. And the first one, what the heck's the first one? It went gold, right? And I saw them later on as one of the greatest live shows I ever saw with Sean Murphy, the female co-lead vocalist in the band. It was one of the greatest concerts I ever saw at the Phoenix here in Toronto, and got to meet the guys and hang out with them on the bus, and Richie Hayward, right, who drummed with Robert Plant as well.
Yeah.
Those guys, so got to interview them and everything. It was one of the funnest, coolest things that I got to do, because that show, you know, the night later on in the night was just so good, and the sound quality was amazing. It was like putting on a big pair of headphones, right? But yeah, they were an amazing band, and they also have that very New Orleans feel to what they do too. That New Orleans is itself. So
yeah. Yeah, I passed up an opportunity to see them in a small little venue that I'd never even heard of before, up in Albany, New York, right before the pandemic, just because it's like an hour and a half away. And I was like, you know, it's like, how am I going to make that happen? I wanted to go because I've never seen them, and I should have. Yeah. And I think the next time, once all this kind of settles down, this world that we're living in today, and we can go see bands again, if they come around, I'm going to go, because I figure they're one of those bands you got to see at least once in your life, right? Because their music is so much fun, so infectious. So.
Yeah. Just one other last one. We're talking about urban, rural, or whatever. And Ohio can be very Southern rocky, right? And so my buddy Michael Hannon, an American Dog, that, you know, they had tons and tons of records out. But the Gods, right? The Gods, that first Gods album, and Nothing Is Sacred, and that biker rock feel and everything. And they even sing with a little bit of a Southern accent, or a very, you know, pronounced American accent, whatever you want to call it. But that first Gods album is a quintessential Southern rock album, I think, too.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that talk about Tom Petty when you talk about Southern rock.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Was that It was Mama's Pride? Is that another one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Tom Petty, I guess, is a California avocado mafia band who happens to be from Florida, right? Aren't they all from Florida? Or
I think so.
Where they started out. So that's kind of the oddness there. I mean, they fit in with that whole California sound. Yet, well, actually, a little bit of the Bruce Springsteen sound as well, I suppose. Bruce Springsteen and John Mellencamp sound. But yeah, I could see them a little bit. not a big fan. I'm not a big Tom Petty fan. No.
You know what it is? And I've had so many people ask me, it's like, Pete, when are you going to do a Tom Petty show? When are you going to do a Tom Petty show? It's like, you know what? I have like a Tom Petty compilation that's got really all the songs I'd ever need. And I don't listen to it that often. You know, I hear some of the Tom Petty stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's good. It's amazing how many hits he had. But I've never been one to go buy Tom Petty albums. It's like, I just, you know what, you hear enough of it on the radio for decades and decades. And, you know, I dig his stuff, but I don't like it enough to go out and dive any deeper. That's basically what it comes to. But there are people who he's like the greatest of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
So
cool.
Anyway, everybody, there you have it. An hour's worth of discussion on some great Southern rock albums. So kind of like what we did on yesterday's prog rock album episode. I urge everybody to list your favorite 10 or 5 Southern rock albums of all time. There's a reason why we're urging people to submit their list. I know we always do that anyway, but Martin and I have talked extensively over the last couple of weeks about really kind of looking at what you guys put in the comments and kind of tabulating that somehow, and then coming back and saying, all right, here, you've heard what we had to say, meaning Martin and I. After doing the research and looking through all the comments, we're going to figure out what you, the viewers, what you have listed and kind of tabulate all.
And it's not only you, the viewers, it's like the right answer in a way, right? It's the democratically arrived at answer. And that's what I've always loved. That's why I love doing poll books and various polls over the years. And we do it with Banger Films as well. We do these polls. It's just cool seeing what the quote unquote correct answer is.
Yeah. In the eyes of the masses, right, so to speak.
Yeah, well, in the quantitative analysis correctness of asking a whole pile of people together and getting the answer, right? So it's not just like, oh, want to know what a few viewers think, or oh, it kind of looks like this is it. No, it's kind of the correct answer in a way. It's like the universal Godhead consciousness answer.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll probably be taking a look at that. Probably in the early new year, which is what, a week and a half away or something like that. So that's what I'll be doing. I'll be going through, once everybody's had a chance to watch and contribute their list. I'll be going through and I'll be just kind of like looking at the 10 most commented albums in both this one, the prog one. I'm going to do the thrash one that we did recently as well. So and I think we have more of these coming. I think I'm going to try and do like a death metal and a black metal one. And did we do a power metal one? I think we did. We did some sort of power metal show. There's going to be a progressive metal one coming up as well. So it'll be interesting to see kind of, what the general consensus is, are the top 10s of all these different genres. So make sure you get your comments down in the comments in the section below, and we'll take a look at them. So visit us on the web also at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. Martin, you want to give them your website to go and check out, order some books?
Yes, martinpopoff.com. Everything's explained there. There's a full page on every book. There's the PayPal buttons and all that stuff. So yeah, martinpopoff.com.
Cool. So upcoming programming. Let's see. So coming up tomorrow, this is a kind of a interesting one. So Jack Toledano and I are going to be talking about our favorite Christmas songs, holiday songs. So that's happening tomorrow. That was actually fun to put together. Lynn Versace is also coming back on the show this weekend. We're going to talk about our 5 favorite MTV videos and our 5 MTV video stinkers, right? So that's happening this weekend. That should be a lot of fun. And then, of course, Monday night is the Monday night must-see TV with the Hollywood Squares, where we'll be talking about some of our favorite releases of 2020. So that's all happening. We'll be seeing Martin again pretty soon on the channel. So look
I urge you, for the sake of the children, you got to look at the Snowy Shaw Krampus video for a Christmas song. Unbelievable. It's the hands down my favorite Christmas song of all time, and the video is to die for. Snowy Shaw Krampus.
So I definitely got to check that out. Snowy's a cool guy, so I will do that. So everybody go check it out here on YouTube. So for Martin Popoff, I am Pete Pardo. Have a good one, everybody, and enjoy your weekend. Take care.